It felt like an eternity before the door finally began to creak open, in a painfully slow motion. Melissa, Clover, and Holly all stood perfectly still, frozen in fear. Vanessa was the only one who still showed not even the slightest sign of fear. Once the door was completely opened at last, there stood a woman in an all-black cloak wearing a terrifying rubber mask.
"Why, hello there, children,"
she growled in a menacing voice that barely sounded human.
"Want some candy, do you?"
She snarled threateningly, holding out a handful of green-black slime that had a horrid stench to it. All of a sudden, without warning, the scary person pulled out a large knife on them.
"You're coming in here with me,"
she snarled, lunging to grab Holly first. Holly, Melissa, and Clover shrieked at the top of their lungs, darting away from the house as fast as their legs could carry them, never once looking back. None of them stopped until they were safe distance away, right near Holly's house. Holly immediately glanced behind her to make sure that Vanessa, Melissa, and Clover were all there. She let out a sigh of relief that her friends were all close by, unharmed. "That was close," Holly exclaimed breathlessly, her heart thundering in her chest in horror.
"You can say that again," replied Melissa, her whole body shaking in terror. I'm never going to that house again, that's for sure. I'm just happy that we're all safe now."
Huffed Clover. I'm surprised the rest of you mashed potato heads were even intelligent enough to run away, they said in an annoyed tone of voice, though Holly could easily detect a hint of fear and uneasiness in their big, deep green eyes. In shaky voice. Vanessa, meanwhile, widened her glossy amber eyes, her intense glare sweeping over Clover, Holly, and Melissa.
"Why are you all talking this way?"
Vanessa suddenly yelled.
"That was an absolute blast! Don't any of you have any sense of adventure, excitement, or thrills?"
"Thrills?" Holly exclaimed. "You do realize that we were nearly killed by that psycho, right? We are never doing that again, and that's the end of it." Vanessa looked as if she were about to protest, but remained silent.
"Fine,"
she finally said with a deep sigh.
"Whatever you say, Holly." "All right, let's go home now. I can't wait to eat all my Halloween candy,"
Melissa squealed in utter joy. "We've already eaten all my candy," Clover grumbled.
"Who cares about candy? I still say the trip to the Creeps house was the most exciting part of tonight,"
said Vanessa. "You crazy, Vanessa? What are you, a mealworm skull?" Clover sneered in her face rudely. Holly simply stared off into space, unable to feel drawn into her friend's conversation. She was thoroughly surprised that they could behave so calmly as if nothing had happened when only a few moments ago they had been running for their lives. She found herself wondering instantly if the person in that old abandoned-looking house was just a weirdo who simply enjoyed scaring people, or if she was the person who had been kidnapping children. These thoughts bothered Holly greatly, even as she told her friends goodnight and headed back to her own home to go to bed. The next morning, after much thought, Holly nervously told her parents what had happened the night before. Horrified, they immediately called the police and told them about the dangerous incident. When searching the Creeps' house later that day, they found that the woman living there had been the person responsible for all the kidnappings that had occurred in the area over the past month. She was immediately arrested, and all of the imprisoned children were freed and reunited with their families. The next day, right after preparing for school, Holly was greeted happily by Melissa.
"Oh, Holly, you're a hero!"
she squealed, her big blue eyes more huge than usual and filled with admiration.
"You saved the lives of all those children. If you hadn't said anything, they would still be prisoners right now. I'm so proud of you. You're so brave!"
Melissa squeaked, her voice sounding like a tiny, adorable kitten, as she hugged Holly tightly while crying tears of joy and excitement. "Yeah, so what, Mel?" Clover scoffed, approaching them. "Any of us could have done that. Why does Holly have to get all the credit?"
Melissa turned to Clover with a happy, warm smile on her face. "Because Holly's the one who actually did do it."
Clover's only response was an annoyed, jealous huff.
"Can we please just go to school already and stop all this silly talk?"
said Vanessa in an extremely frustrated tone of voice. Holly couldn't help but notice that Vanessa seemed far more irritable than usual, with even more of a sinister expression on her face. However, Holly shrugged it off with the thought that Vanessa was probably, like Clover, just jealous that she hadn't been the hero responsible for the capture of the kidnapper.
Come on, everybody, lighten up, Melissa insisted cheerfully. It doesn't really matter who saved the children. What matters is that they're all happy and safe at home where they belong. Now, let's head off to school, she said with a happy smile.
Holly couldn't help but smile as well. Mel's happiness and smile sure are contagious, she thought with a chuckle. With that pleasant thought in mind, all four of the close friends headed off to school, ready to start a new day. There would be many great times in their future, but little did they know that a little over a decade after this, they would all be faced with something much worse than anything they had ever endured before.